has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the world. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the red garden, sprung in completeness where his feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the world.
Today we gather to honor the life and mourn the death of Larry Jong Jean, a devoted husband to Ray, a father to Ying and Ken, a father-in-law to Kay and Shirley, a brother to Liesl and Millie, and brother-in-law to Wing and Arthur, a grandfather and a great-grandfather, an uncle, a cousin, and a dear friend. Larry was a man of great integrity and generosity, of compassion for others, and a strong and courageous person. Never did it occur to him not to continue on, forging ahead through whatever challenges life sent his way. He was that person who was willing to make sacrifices for the benefit of his family, living in Canada without his wife Ray and daughter Ying for many years, while he began making a life for himself and them here in Canada. A life that he believed would be better than what they could have in China, and his motivation for immigrating. One cannot know what it must have been like for Larry for the first 5 years here, being away from his wife and firstborn, and then another 8 years before he would be able to realize the family being reunited. Larry was a man with a huge smile that welcomed everyone he met with openness, and was certainly a major contributing factor in the success of his business, Jean's Restaurant and the House of Jean. His culinary skill and business acumen, along with innate knowledge of people, helped and his family to realize his dreams of restaurant ownership, and that legacy continues to this day. Larry's dreams brought him first to Vancouver from Hong Kong, then to Windsor, where he had family and could begin working. From there, he would go to New York during the off-season, gaining valuable cooking skills. He came to Stratford when an opportunity at the Golden Bamboo became available. But never far away from his heart were his family in China. And throughout his life, and continuing as a part of his legacy, he has financially supported his family, still living in China, and sponsored many to immigrate to Canada. His generosity and his loyalty to family will forever be one of the many gifts that Larry has given and shared. Dennis Young recalled that in the 1970s, when he was working to help resettle Vietnamese refugees in Stratford, Larry's generosity shone brightly when he insisted that their first meal in Canada be at Jean's restaurant, providing much welcome relief to the newcomers after their long journey. Larry was living and working in Stratford when Ray was able to join him, and over the next 5 years, their family would grow to include 2 sons, Wayne and Ken. Larry and Ray would also see their dream of restaurant ownership come to fruition. It was not an easy dream to realize, but with Larry and Ray's work ethic and dedication, the restaurant thrived. As a boss, Larry was one of the very best, even driving staff home at 3:30 in the morning after the restaurant had closed to make sure that they got home safely. Dave Swinkles writes of Larry, "I have such a love and admiration for this man as my first employer. He always took in some of us less than desirable youth, gave us jobs, and treated us like gold." Both Wayne and Ken worked in the restaurant alongside their dad and mom, washing dishes by hand for $1 a day, 7 days a week. When Ying was able to immigrate, she too worked alongside her parents and her siblings, but since she was already a young teenager, Larry paid her the minimum wage. Life lessons were learned at work as well as at home, and the principles of hard work, integrity, and respect were passed on to Ying, Wayne, and Ken by example. It would not take long before Larry and Ray's hard work allowed them to open the second restaurant in Stratford, House of Jean, in 1980. Larry owned and operated that restaurant until 2000, when he somewhat retired. I say somewhat because his entire life was the restaurant world. So he continued helping Ken at Jean's and Wayne. Although it might seem that Larry's life was only that, it was far more. Family, giving back to his community and his extended family through his great generosity, and sports were all major parts of his life. His favorite team was the New York Yankees. But in his spare time, and not sure where he found spare time, he followed baseball, basketball, and hockey. And in his most recent years, it was the Super Sports channel that was on his TV. Larry has been described as the nicest person that you could ever meet. The man with the most welcoming smile, a man who showed respect and kindness to everyone, and the person with the very best Chinese food that you could ever eat served in his restaurants. Indeed, his legacy lives on. And now, as we listen to a song chosen by his family, may your hearts be comforted and filled with the love that he brought to your lives.
I wish that heaven had visiting hours, so I could just show up and bring the news that she's getting older. And I wish that you met her The things that you learn from me, I got them all from you. If I just stay a while and we'll put all the world to rights. The little ones will grow and I'll still drink your favorite wine. And soon they're going to close, but I'll see you another day. So much has changed since you've been away. I wish that heaven had visiting hours, so I could just swing by and ask your advice. What would you do in my situation? I haven't a clue how I'd even raise them. What would you do? 'Cause you always do what's right. And we just took a while until my worries disappear. I'll tell you that I'm scared of turning out a failure. You'd say, remember that the answer's in the love that we create. So much has changed since you've been that heaven had visiting hours, and I would ask them if I could take you home. But I know what they'd say, that it's for the best. So I will live life the way you taught me and make it on my own. I will close the door, but I will open up my heart, and everyone I love will know exactly who you are. 'Cause this is not goodbye, it is just till we meet again. So much has changed since you've been away.
And now to continue with Larry's story, Laura and then Lindsay and then Ken will be coming forward to share parts of it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura. I'm Larry's granddaughter, and I'm delivering this on behalf of my mom, Ying. Thank you all for being here today to celebrate the life of my grandfather, Larry Zhang Jean. My grandfather was a man of extraordinary resilience and determination. Though his loss is immeasurable, so is the love, wisdom, and legacy he has left behind. While he was born in Toisan, China, this story of my grandfather begins in 1952 when he assumed a fake identity and embarked on a 19-day boat journey to Canada from Hong Kong. As going-away gifts, he was given packs of cigarettes. They only lasted as long as Honolulu. It's hard to imagine his sacrifices, leaving behind my Grandma Ray, a brand new mom, to my 20 days old mom, with the hope to build a better future. My grandpa actually would have left earlier for Canada, but his father's unexpected passing delayed his departure. Imagine a 19-year-old young man all on his own with little to no English or skills starting in a new country. My grandpa's first job in Canada was in Windsor, where he began working as a dishwasher, learned to cook, and attended English night classes. In the off-season, he worked in New York City. The little money he earned was sent home to support his family, including his loving stepmom, who raised him since he was 12, and his two younger sisters, Liesl and Millie. My grandfather's dream of reuniting with his beloved wife came true in 1957 when my grandma was finally able to make her way to Canada. Shortly after, my grandpa accepted a job at the Golden Bamboo, and my grandparents moved to Stratford. A few years later, my grandpa purchased their first home. They lived in a tiny apartment on the main floor of their duplex while renting out the upper unit to help cover the mortgage. This was the first of his many real estate purchases. By the early 1960s, the Canadian government had introduced a policy that allowed my grandpa to reveal his true identity, thus allowing him to register his family in Canada. My grandpa questioned whether this was actually a ploy that could result in being deported back to Hong Kong. However, he'd come this far. It was a risk he was willing to take. This chance allowed my mom, aged 13, to finally come to Canada and reunite with her parents. Those early days were a challenge for my teenage mom, getting to know her dad and adjusting to living with her parents. Addressing a man who you don't know as dad doesn't exactly come naturally. My grandparents scrimped and saved and decided to open their new business. After much rejection from various sources, including many banks, my grandpa was finally granted a small loan from CIBC, where he became a loyal customer for life. In addition to my mom's $3,000 savings and a loan from Mr. Finch, the former cleaner at the Golden Bamboo, this allowed my grandparents to open and run their restaurant. In addition to paying my mom and Mr. Finch back principal plus interest, Mr. Finch was granted an endless supply of grilled cheese sandwiches and coffee until my grandpa retired. Despite the challenge it was to open a new business, my grandfather never forgot about his family back home. No matter how much or how little he had here, he continued to support his stepmom until she died. Jean's became more than a restaurant, it became a community. My grandfather had loyal customers. One particular customer would only place his order, and if my grandpa was cooking in the kitchen. Before placing his order, this customer would drive to the back of the restaurant to see if my grandpa's Cadillac was in sight. If it was, he would then proceed to call my grandpa and request special dishes that were not on the menu. He was indeed a loyal and unique customer, and his daughter, son, and granddaughter are here today. For years, Jean's was where people gathered after long nights for family dinners or to celebrate life's moments. It wasn't just the chicken balls or the egg rolls. It was the warmth and generosity my grandpa infused into everything he did. He took pride in being a business owner and was good at showing his appreciation to his customers and staff. My sisters and I hold fond memories of the Christmas parties at House of Jean. Santa would come every year bearing gifts for everyone. He was a devoted husband to my Grandma Ray for 76 incredible years. Yes, your math is correct. He was 15 when they got married. Their bond was a testament to love, perseverance, and partnership. Even until the end, he did not want to be living away from her. He was a proud father to my mom. While there was initial resistance to the idea of my mom marrying a white man from Stratford, with threats of boycotting their backyard wedding, my grandma and grandpa both eventually came around and were able to put their ideals aside to support my mom and dad in their marriage.
Up until my dad passed away, my grandpa was the respectful, welcoming, generous father-in-law one could ever hope for. Race and culture aside, he recognized that my dad was able to take care of his daughter and make her happy. For those who have ever wondered about the story behind the tennis court and how two business owners who were never home ended up with a tennis court on their property, the answer is quite simple. What do you do with a big lot with little time to maintain? You install a tennis court, of course. Well, that court was never used by my grandparents. The neighboring kids, my sisters and I, and all of our kids have wonderful memories of passing time on their court. In most recent years, there have been many occasions where my kids and nieces were all there playing tennis, hockey, and basketball, riding their bikes and scooters, and picking pears, somehow all at the same time. As I stand here today, I am reminded of the enormous shoes he has left to fill. But I also know that his legacy lives on in all of us. In every story we share, every meal we cook with love, and every time we extend a hand to someone in need, we honor him. Gung Gung, thank you for the life you built. Rest in peace. We will always carry your love and legacy with us.
Hello, I'm Lindsay. I'm Larry's granddaughter, and I'm going to be reading something sent to us from Joanne Fu, who is one of Larry's nieces. Hello, everyone. I'm Joanne, niece of Aunt Ray and Uncle Larry. I'm living in Hong Kong now, but some of you may know me from Jean's Restaurant many years ago. I'm honored to have the opportunity to share a few words with you at this special moment. I met Aunt and Uncle for the first time during their quick visit to Beijing when I was 16 years old. With their kind sponsorship, I left China 2 years later, taking a flight for the first time in my life, going thousands of miles to study in Canada. Uncle Larry drove to Toronto, picked me up, and brought me back to Stratford to live with them. Leaving home for the first time, barely speaking any English, I had no idea what to expect in an entirely new place. I'll always remember my first day of school at Stratford Central. On that cold winter morning, Uncle got up much earlier than his normal working day. He taught me where and which city bus to take and where to get off. When the nervous me finally made it onto the street where I could see the schoolyard ahead, I could see his car. And he was waiting for me, making sure that I arrived safely. At that very moment, I felt such warmth and content filling me up, knowing that I was in good care, just like back at home. Throughout the years I lived in Canada, Uncle Larry and Aunt Ray always treated me like one of their own children. Uncle Larry is one of the greatest elders one could ever wish for. He was so kind, empathetic, generous, and humorous. I used to work at Jean's Restaurant on weekends during school years. I learned firsthand that the business owners are actually the hardest workers in the operation. Uncle always had the best working spirit. He would talk about baseball when rolling egg rolls. He would comment about recent hockey games with customers, converse socially with festival goers, and it would make the long hours and endless work seem so much easier. The easygoing, yet caring at the same time manner Uncle showed subconsciously influenced me over those years, and it helped to shape my work ethic and skills that benefited me in later years. Uncle Larry, I'm so fortunate and forever grateful for the kindness and generosity I received with life-changing opportunity to study in Canada and see a much wider, greater part of the world. I'm so proud you were in my life. I'll miss you dearly.
Good morning. I'm Ken Jean, son of Larry Jean. I'm the youngest of his 3 kids. First of all, I'd like to thank all the relatives and friends who have come today to help celebrate the life of Larry Jean. My father had just turned 91 on December 31st. He was born in 1933, married to my mother in 1948. Had his first child, my sister Ying, 1952. And leaves for Canada a few weeks later on a 19-day boat ride to Canada. My mother would come a couple years later. My sister would come to Canada when she turned 13. And my brother, Wayne, and myself were born in Canada. The immigrant story, more about how my dad left China and started his journey to Canada. I was fortunate to go on a trip to China in 1987 with my mother and father. What I saw was his generosity and care for his relatives. Dad was the local guy who left China to go to the promised land of Canada and return a successful businessman. I remember him with a stack of dollar bills, 50s and $100 US dollar bills, and he was passing these out to relatives and friends at both my mother's village and also my father's village. I estimate he gave out about $2,000 in U.S. bills. On one occasion at my father's village, the relative who was escorting us around whispered to my dad and pointed, "That's the guy." This little old man would come up and talk to my dad. A couple minutes later, my dad would give him a $100 U.S. bill, and this man walked away. Later, I found out this guy was the reason my father and mother fled the village in China to go to Hong Kong. This guy threatened to report my father to the soldiers who were marching through the country and were about 1 day away from the village. Both my parents left for Hong Kong that night for their safety. So fast forward 40 years later, they meet again on our 1987 trip, and my dad gives him a $100 US dollar bill. This man was the reason why my parents left China. My father held no grudge. Maybe he was thanking him for making him leave. It turned out well for my father and mother. This little old man was still in the same village 40 years later. Not sure if he was the same small-time thug he was 40 years ago, but my father came back to China as a successful businessman and was the bigger man that day. The restaurant life for my father started almost immediately when he arrived in Canada. It was dishwashing and waitering and some cooking in Windsor, Stratford, New York City. He had connections with relatives and friends at those places. A relative knew about a job opening at a Chinese restaurant in Stratford to train as a cook. He would learn the restaurant business there. He would open the first Jean's restaurant location at 38 Erie Street in 1970. I was 8 years old. He tried to open on my birthday, but missed by a few days. I recall opening weekend when there was a pyramid stack of six-pack Coca-Colas, just like you see in a grocery store. I recall the opening weekend, and we gave out all those six packs. It was one takeout or one pack of Coke. It was a successful opening weekend. But despite the good start of the restaurant, there were still financial struggles. He was still sending money back to China and also had a wife and kid to support on top of running the restaurant. The business would soon catch on, and in 1975, Gene's restaurant would move to the bigger location at the present 81 Ontario Street location. In another 5 years, he would open up the buffet location, House of Gene, in 1980. House of Gene would expand into the next building in 1982 and had a capacity of 300 seats. The buffet restaurant House of Gene had a 20-year run from 1980 to 2000. What I saw was a relentless work ethic. He was a hands-on restaurant owner. He put the time and work into the business. He would pass Gene's restaurant to me in 2004. He would be 70 years old when he fully retired. Dad was a people person. My father was known to be really good to his customers and to his staff. To customers, he was the ultimate host. He took pride making sure his customers were well looked after. To his staff, he was kind and took care of them. Any late shifts, he would make sure staff got rides home or sent them home in a taxi. Dad also hosted some pretty darn good parties and lavish meals. Like I said, he was the ultimate host. I've been getting a lot of messages of condolences on Facebook, but what surprises me most is how many former staff from Gene's restaurant and House of Gene have expressed how generous and nice a person my father was. A lot of staff worked for us for many years. The longest working staff, waitress Diane, worked for us for 33 years. Then there was Donna and Maggie, who worked for us over 20 years. As well, quite a few who worked over 10 years. The sheer number of long-time staff is a testament of how well my father treated his staff. As for our family, my favorite memories would be when he would host holiday dinners like Christmas or Thanksgiving. He would go above and beyond for what he would do for food preparation. He spent hours preparing food. It would be the best of times they were held at the restaurant. The relationship of my mother and father. My father loved my mother. They were married 76 years. Wedding anniversaries were never mentioned in the household, so we never knew the exact date. Married in 1948, which means Dad is 15 years old. My mother is supposed to be a year younger, so it's possible she could have been 14. But because of the Chinese calendar, the dates haven't been figured out. So for the last 10 years or so, they had an application to go into a nursing home, but turned it down every time space opened up for them. As health for both of my mother and father really started to decline, and with very different health issues, it was apparent they couldn't be transferred to the same nursing home facility. Dad did not want to be separated from my mother, Ray. He fought that as long as he could. Finally, when things were getting really bad, he agreed to let my mother go to a nearby nursing home. This was in early December. Dad would stay home by himself. We would take Dad as much as we could to see Mom at the nursing home as much as we could. Dad had a fall in late December and was transferred to London Hospital, which is an hour away, and it would be impossible for him to visit my mother. On January 2nd, I was visiting my mom at the nursing home, and I FaceTimed Dad at the London Hospital. They got to see each other for a short chat. I'm glad I could facilitate that last communication with my parents. Dad would pass away the next day. Larry Gene's legacy will always be tied to the restaurants that he operated. It is the power of food that brings people together. Food is tied to celebrations like birthdays, weddings, group get-togethers, family dinners, or just plain enjoyment of eating. Larry Jean was the master of creating memories through food, either through preparation with his staff, serving food to customers and to his family, and that's what made him so special. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liesl. I came from Chicago. And then I'm Larry's stepsister. When Larry left Hong Kong and took a 19 days old boat ride to a place unknown, so far away, he was 19. I was only a toddler. So I don't know Larry, my brother, through my teenage years. The memory I have, what I learned, is from my mother, the stories she told me. My mother was a stepmother to Larry when he was 12, but they have the best relationship. Because my mom told me whenever Larry, my brother, pee with banana, she said, the first bite, he always give to my mom. And then Larry was so grateful. He told my mom that when he embarked the journey to Hong Kong, my mom bought him a whole new set of luggage, and then a new suit. And then my mom told me that my brother made a promise that he will always take care of her. So back in those years, telephone is not that common that you just call long distance. Very expensive. The only thing I remember is that every month on a certain days, beginning of the month, we receive a letter and a check from my brother, all the way from Canada, sent it to support me. He support me. I can afford to go to finish my high school, a private high school, and also my sisters. So the first time, so I was forever grateful. First time I met my brother is after I got married and immigrated to United States. And my first son, Peter, was about a year old. We visited my brother and my sister-in-law, Ray, and his family. I forgot the year. But Larry was so excited and welcomed us. He literally replaced the whole house of carpet for us. So you can tell that how anxious he was to greet me. And for the person support me through my teenage years I never met. He was my brother. Not just a brother, he's more like a father to me. And I thank him. I remember I thank him that he support us all these years. But he said, that's the promise I made to your mom, and I always keep my promise. He said, when I can afford a bowl of kanji, juk, and you will have kanji. When I can afford a bowl of rice, you will have rice in Hong Kong, back home. That's how a great person he is. Judging and listening to all the story, reading on the attribute wall, and people written, sending all the messages, we all know what a great man he was. A great father, great husband, great grandfather to all the grandchildren, and to all her neighbors and friends. I talked to some of the neighbors and friends and through the story because he was a great man. And I owe him my heartfelt gratitude. I wasn't prepared. I was thinking able to speak, but I have to openly thank my brother, Larry, for his love for me, my mother, and my sister. And it's great that we have a great person here, but then Now he's at a better place. He will always be remembered. Thank you. And thank you for all coming.
Words can never truly describe the life of a person who had such an impact on your life. And so it is to the legacy that Larry Jean has left that you look for inspiration. For Larry's life was built on the values of integrity, generosity, dedication, devotion, and kindness, just to name a few. He was someone who gave back to the community without reservation, that supported him, and that too is a part of the legacy that he now leaves. Although he kept traditions from his heritage and Chinese culture, he also embraced wholeheartedly the life that he had chosen here in Canada. His death leaves a very large void in the lives of his family and those dearest to him, those whose life he has so greatly influenced. So grieve his death well, honoring all that was important to him and celebrating a life so very well lived by him. Encourage his presence in your life going forward. Share his story and weave the wonders of his legacy into your life each day. When you think of him, let his smile warm your heart and bring a special peace to your soul. Know that everyone who grieves in their own way and time, so place no restrictions on yourself or each other as you walk this journey forward. Be respectful and kind of the feelings, thoughts, and memories that you and others experience as you transition your life now that Larry's physical presence is no more. I'd like to share this little poem. In a world of spices, steam, and flame, Larry built a legacy, carved a name. With hands that folded dumplings tight and hearts he warmed with every bite. For decades long, his doors stayed wide, a haven where cultures and tastes collide. Through bustling kitchens, stories wove in every dish, his spirit roved. Noodles danced with flavors rare, a chef's precision, a craftsman's care. From sunrise prep to evening's close, in fragrant air, his love arose. At 91, his journey's done, but memories linger, brightly spun. Each plate a canvas, each meal a song. His artistry lives, though he has moved on. Rest now, dear chef, your table's set in realms of peace where stars have met. A life well lived, a story grand, forever held in every hand. As we come to the end of this service, may you carry Larry's memory with you, not as a shadow of loss, but as a beacon of love and inspiration. Immediately following the service, we'll be going to the cemetery for the burial. There will be a reception at the Stratford Country Club following the burial. So anyone not wishing to join the family at the cemetery, please make your way to the Stratford Country Club and wait for them there. They will join you soon. Please stand now, if you are able, while we close this service of tribute and farewell to Larry with a blessing. May the love you hold for Larry surround you, giving you strength in the days to come. May his laughter echo in your hearts, reminding you to cherish the small moments and embrace life with joy, connection, and the power of love. And may his light shine on, a gentle guide, as you continue to honor his memory, finding comfort in the love that he brought into your lives. Go gently into this world, knowing that Larry's spirit is forever a part of you.
so long.